One sunny spring day long ago, under the iron bridge where the brown murky waters flowed fast and free, where ripples glistened in reflection of the sun, on the outskirts of a lovely small town, lived an otter and an owl. They were at first oblivious to each other's existence, and Bright Eyes had in general been unaware of herself for so many years that she didn't quite feel happy in life. Always getting lost while looking for feathers, Bright Eyes would get into trouble with her papa most evenings, as she would always be late for dinner and cause her parents to worry. But Bright Eyes was always okay, covered in mud, scratches on face, accompanied with a cheeky smile. Little did Bright Eyes' parents know all what she'd been up to, who she had met, what dangerous situation she'd got herself into. The owl, however, was wise and free, Bright Eyes thought, as she had wings to fly and a cosy nest in the top of the tallest tree where she could see everything from. Next to the tallest tree stands proud a weeping willow tree, which is beautiful and home to lots of birds as well as small animals and insects, including woodpeckers, ladybirds, robins, magpies, crows, ravens, shrews, mice, pigeons, squirrels, bats, spiders, and many more. There were lots of hiding places within the canopy of the willow tree for lots of different animals to live, hide, play and eat. Nature is paradise and humans are destroying our homes. Not only are they taking our trees, but they're shooting animals just for fun. This is true. Stories are told by the old wise owls around the fire on hazy summer full moon nights to the young animals to teach them how to be more vigilant. There is one story about great-great-uncle Paddy, who was an enthusiastic traveller 100 years ago, but he never came back to Iron Bridge. Relatives had to stop worrying about him after 10 years missing. The creatures prayed every day and every night for Great Uncle Paddy to come home, but they gave up waiting and had to remember him for the vibrant young traveller that he was. There were always questions asked about Uncle Paddy, and some creatures used to make up stories saying he was run over by a truck and stuffed for a display cabinet in the local antique shop. What a horrible thought! It was upsetting for Bright Eyes to imagine that, but it was easy to imagine too. Every time Bright Eyes thought of it, she was more and more curious to see if it were true. How could she find out? Why did she need to know so much? Every night Bright Eyes dreamed about Uncle Paddy and was disturbed by what she felt, so she decided to fight sleep. Instead, she stayed awake so that she could find an old wise owl and simply ask them. The feeling Bright Eyes had every time she had this dream would startle her awake. Not knowing the answers made her determined to leave Iron Bridge one day. What was beyond the town? Had any creature apart from Uncle Paddy left Iron Bridge? Had any creature gone and come back safe to tell the truth? This was now a personal quest for Bright Eyes. It was something she just had to find out. A plan was in action, so she decided to go on an adventure. So with a hop, skip, a whistle and a jump, Bright Eyes embarked on a journey away from the safety of Iron Bridge. Meanwhile, from the top of the highest oak tree, Owl spotted Bright Eyes, who was acting very peculiar. To amuse herself, Bright Eyes made shapes in the mud as usual. Juggling rocks was another favoured activity, and collecting feathers was something she did most days. Bright Eyes loved feathers, and decided she would make herself a feathered headset when she got home. If she got home. The birds wouldn't mind, as the feathers had already fallen from their bodies onto the ground. The dreaded humans liked to row their boats along the river and cause small tidal waves, which sometimes disturbed the creatures living there. One small wave would be the warning sign the creatures needed to signal to the other animals that humans were on their territory. Otters liked to play and make little burrows in the muddy clay, and because of their greyish-brown colour, they would generally go unnoticed by humans, so that was good, because they liked to live in peace. Bright Eyes is a gentle and friendly soul, and on this day she made art in hope that the universe would give her what she desired most in life, and that was to feel loved. Bright Eyes loved with all her heart and helped anyone who needed help. All of the other otters around her seemed to have families and pups, but Bright Eyes was always alone. Some creatures were very cruel to her, so she thought it was normal to feel sad. In the past, Bright Eyes lived for the enjoyment of other animals and didn't know how important she was until she met Owl. When Bright Eyes wasn't spending time alone or working hard pleasing other creatures, you would find her playing in the mud with the other otters' pups, but as years went on, Bright Eyes noticed that she was still alone and miserable, whilst other friends seemed to be really happy and content in life. So Bright Eyes went on a search in order to find happiness. Little did she know she had it inside her heart all along, but she had just lost sight of it for some time. What an unexpected start to such a beautiful morning. Owl had flown away, but you know what? Owl flew so far that she forgot that she was too frightened to fly further than the town. Through the freshly sun-kissed sky she soared way up high, over the bridge, past the town, through the fields, over the roads, following rivers and streams. Owl did not stop for a rest. She flew with no destination in mind. Her wings were aching and tired, and her eyes were sleepy, but the fright was enough to set her on her way. Meanwhile, back on the red river bank, Bright Eyes lay calmly, noticing the beauty in her surroundings, which helped take her mind off the pain. This was one of her biggest lessons. The golden sun shone down on her, dried up her wounds and tears, and warmed her heart. All she could think about was how her curiosity had gotten her into trouble. Why did she have to test everything to see how it worked? To see if it was true? Everyone is different after all. Bright Eyes learned to admire the flowers rather than try and pick them. This way the flowers would live longer, and the bees can pollinate them, and the world would be a more beautiful place. Where was Owl? Otter knew Owl would be okay because Owl is wise. We don't know how wise Owl is when he's had no sleep and flying round in the middle of the day, though. Let's hope she doesn't fly into a tree trunk and fall into the murky river flowing fast and free. Oh dear, this is terrible, thought Bright Eyes. She had no choice but to let thoughts of Owl go. There was nothing she could have done in the mess she was in. Her body was aching, and she knew she needed to rest and heal before figuring out how to be happy. So she fell asleep in the sunshine and entered the dream state. How blissful is this dream, a place where she loved to go when she slept, away from her problems and worries and thoughts of how to make the world a better place, surrendering into a deep sleep. Now here's something very strange indeed. While Bright Eyes lay dreaming about a creature in a cage with chains around his paws, Owl had actually found the very same creature in real life in a farm shop a couple of hours' fly away down the river. The creature was a raccoon. Owl had never seen a raccoon before, and neither had Otter, but she did remember a story told once around a fire many moons ago about such a creature. That creature must be a raccoon because of the black stripe running across his face and his sharp teeth and shape of his paws. Tossing and turning in her dream as she felt raccoon's pain. Meanwhile, Owl rested in the shade of a tree. Raccoons are not meant to be in this country. They're native to America. How did a raccoon end up in a farm shop in the English countryside? Why would a human take a raccoon from her home and bring her to a strange place so very far away? This was something that needed to be investigated. As Bright Eyes dreamed, Owl slept. Life carried on as normal. Birds sang, chirped and tweeted. A robin landed at Bright Eyes' feet to take a closer look. The river ran calm but fast as the sun shone proud in the sky. The muddy banks were dry and Bright Eyes was healing as she slept. The dream disturbed her as she could relate to the raccoon in a way that she has been trapped in her own mind, like the raccoon is trapped in the cage. The more Bright Eyes tossed and turned, the more she slid down the embankment until slowly but surely she slumped into the water with a plop. And there was where she woke up. What a way to wake up. The cold water shocked Otter into an abrupt awakening. As she sank down out of her depth, she swallowed some water and quickly came up for air, but first coughed in shock. This time, Bright Eyes' eyes almost popped out of her head. Now she knew how Owl felt when inquiring over her sleepy posture. As Bright Eyes scrambled and clawed at the muddy embankment, she managed to lift herself back to safety, whilst coughing and spitting out water. Look at the positive side of things. The cold water soothed Otter's wounds, and the sleep had helped her heal. Now Bright Eyes was fully awake and ready to live life to the full without worrying what other creatures were up to. Life is too short to live in pain, and now with this new awareness, she could use her experiences to help others. And her fascination with Owl was telling her that she had her own inner wisdom, and all she needed to do was tap into it whenever she needed. From then on, Bright Eyes very rarely found herself in sticky situations, and she took a deep breath, jumped headfirst into the swirling current, and weaved in and out of the reeds at the bottom of the river, flowing free and darting fast. She caught a fish in her mouth and ate it for her tea. Yum! That was much needed, as Bright Eyes hadn't eaten properly in days. Another reason why she felt ill. If she'd eaten good food, then maybe she would not have fallen off the tree. There's no point in regretting, but maybe the blue toxic spray can would have been less toxic if her body had been strong enough to fight off infection. Now Bright Eyes makes sure she plays, works, swims, walks and eats food made from the colours of the rainbow every day to keep her healthy in her body and mind. Weeks went by and Bright Eyes started to feel less pain and more self-love. The scar across her chest reminded her that she needed to stay aware, so when she looked down at her chest, she would put her paw over her scar and pray to the universe to help her stay alert, because she never wanted to feel that bad ever again, and certainly never wants to make any other creatures feel frightened or sad. With a sigh, Bright Eyes carried on swimming up the river, as that is what her heart was telling her to do. She didn't ask why, she just swam and enjoyed every second of her journey alone. This was a new feeling for her because she always craved company, but at this time in her life, she was happy she had the strength to go alone. Despite the pain, she was grateful for the lesson as it opened her eyes. Thoughts of poor Raccoon kept popping into her head, and she found it very hard to shrug off. There was something special about this dream. It was one of those magic ones. You know, the ones we talked about earlier? Suddenly, Bright Eyes remembered something a travelling goose from Canada had told her by the fire when she was really young. A Canadian goose. They knew about raccoons, as they both from America. This goose said that raccoons are like the Robin Hoods of the animal kingdom, and they're generous providers for their family, friends, elderly and infirm. Remembering this information spoke volumes to Bright Eyes, and she knew that she needed to take on some of Raccoon's medicine. There was something about the dream which was so very real. It was Bright Eyes who needed to be the generous provider, and now is the time to be everything she could ever be and more, with thanks to the other creatures as medicine. Wise like Owl, generous and protective like Raccoon, balanced and playful like Otter. She would never be able to remain balanced unless she used the other creatures' medicine too, as she needed to have the courage to follow her dream of travelling alone. The love she felt for Owl would be with her everywhere she went, and deep down she lived in hope that she would see Owl again, and wanted so much to give her a hug, but she knew that was not possible. Like the sun and the moon in the sky, like the day and the night, it was never possible for them to be together. This made Otter very sad, and when she thought about it, so instead, to take her mind off the pain, she tried to focus on things that made her happy, things which took her mind off Owl, and in time she grew strong and was gentle with herself at all times. As days and nights passed, Otter was healing, while Owl slept through the days again and used her energy wisely at night. Owl knew she needed to help Raccoon, and she was going to try her best to make sure Raccoon eventually got free, but an action plan was needed. This was a job for all the animals together. Owl knew she had to call a meeting and was calm after catching up with some sleep. It was not very wise of her to swoop down and scar Bright Eyes' chest, but she knew there was no point in feeling bad and had to let it go, and carried on with her teachings and started planning a meeting. Owl was healing herself and had to detach from Otter. When thoughts of the past turned into painful emotions, Owl would breathe deeply and close her eyes in meditation. Owls were good at looking at the bigger picture because they were high in the trees or flying in the sky, unlike the rodents, who, with much scrutiny, create nests with no awareness of possible dangers. That can lurk down on them from above. Owl decided to make a map. This map would be different from the ones she had made before. This would be bigger and included areas around the town and all the roads and streams and fields and other towns leading to the farm shop where poor Raccoon was trapped in cages in a chain. Every night Owl worked on the map with help from sleepy bluebirds who awoke especially early in the morning when it was still dark. The bluebirds helped to shine a light on the map with their bright ideas. They were happy little fellows and loved helping out at all times. The map was coming along just as Owl had imagined it, and the creatures congratulated her in her excitement over the plan to rescue Raccoon. An unexpected disaster. Meanwhile, Owl delegated various animals to do different jobs in order for the rescue mission to succeed. Butterfly told a weary old moth where the shopkeeper kept the keys for Raccoon's cage. By the time Moth delivered the message to Owl, it was too late, but all was not lost. At an arranged time at dusk, on a night when suspicious grey clouds floated fast in the sky, a perfect time for a rescue mission, for no light from the stars could reveal their quiet hiding spots. Some animals gathered discreetly in the shadows of the farm shop fence between some trees. Owl sat on the roof scanning the grounds of the farm. The woman who worked there did the usual regular checks before locking up the shop for the night. As soon as the woman drove away, a lurking magpie swooped down towards Raccoon's cage and flew headfirst into a flower pot on the ground, knocking it over to reveal the key to the cage. Raccoon had a fright. Sadly, he watched Magpie quickly take the key in her beak before eagerly flying away. A tear flowed out of Raccoon's eye, down his face, before slowly it dropped down, making a gentle splash on the cemented floor below where Raccoon lay. Owl saw what had happened and took to the skies to follow Magpie. A distant rumble of thunder and a flash of lightning frightened some of the animals, so they scurried home. "You think you're so clever, Magpie," shouted Owl as she caught up with her, the little thief, in no time at all. Rain pelted down harder. "My family told me about your kind," Owl screeched at Magpie as they flew in figures of 8 up and down, inside out. Now this was one angry owl, but luckily for Magpie, not an angry and hungry owl. Besides, Owl would never want to eat a magpie. They disgust her so much. There are some nice genuine magpies out there, but Owl is traumatized and triggered by a story her parents told her by the fire about how a magpie tried to steal her before she was born, when she was just an egg. As wise as Owl is, she just could not stop imagining what could have happened. The thoughts consumed her. Every time she saw a magpie, she felt an unpleasant feeling inside her stomach and chest. The feeling caused an automatic reaction in Owl, and instead of letting Magpie go, she wanted to kill her. Not all magpies behave in this way, but this one in particular was a pro at sabotaging other creatures' happiness. This one would go all out to ruin a poor creature's life. Another bolt of fork lightning shot down in a bright neon blue strobe in the sky ahead of the chase. It was very difficult for the birds to see with all the rain and wind blowing in their faces, especially as owls are long-sighted and so get a bit blurry-eyed when trying to focus on objects directly in front of them. They were soaking wet and freezing cold, but kept flying as fast as their wings could take them. Suddenly, another bolt of lightning struck the metal key which was hanging out of Magpie's beak, and the key dropped down through the sky out of Owl's sight, gone. Such a fright. Magpie had, as she froze stiff mid-flight, shook vigorously and fell. Despite how angry Owl was feeling, she wasted no time and swooped downwards like a dart, catching up with the deeply disturbed magpie as she tumbled and turned helplessly through the air. Finally, Owl caught up with Magpie's limp, falling body and moved quickly underneath her, where she fell upon Owl's back to a feathery, soft landing. The shock of the incident left Magpie in a daze and with very bad vertigo. Magpie was carried to the secret garden and was gently placed by the lily pond, where she could be healed by the light workers. It was past midnight now, and Raccoon still had not been rescued. The animals, who loyally stayed patiently, were worried and scared, so awaited Owl's return. The key fell fast with the hard rain, hitting branches and leaves along the way down through the canopy until it reached its new destination in the thick, muddy undergrowth, very near to Iron Bridge. A plan B was needed. How were the animals going to rescue Raccoon now? While all this was happening, Bright Eyes stayed warm, dry and safe inside a hollow fallen tree trunk not that far away from the secret garden. Little did Bright Eyes know how close she was and what secrets were yet to be discovered. There was much talk about the incident with Owl and Magpie amongst the animals, news travelling far and wide. Rumours were made and messages were mixed up. It was a complete disaster. Close to where the key embedded itself into the mud, a young moth stirred gently on a branch under a bamboo leaf, where he rested to shelter from the storm. Some bats heard the sound too, but ignored it and carried on foraging for food. Did you know that bats eat up to 3,000 insects every night, and out of all the creatures they have the best hearing abilities in the world? A calmness grew, and the rain finally stopped. A little mouse came out of his hiding place and stumbled upon the key poking out of the earth. After sniffing at the curious object, Mouse took the key in her hands and tugged it with great might until it moved slightly loose in the mud. With great difficulty, she finally pulled the key free. What was she going to do with it now? Mouse was very proud of herself, so she dragged the key back to her family's nest so she could ask them what they thought it was in the morning. The family of mice were asleep, so Mouse snuggled up with them, closed her eyes and drifted back into the dream state. It took some time for Owl to get back to the animals, but took even more time to explain to them what happened. "Should have let Magpie die," snarled Fox. "Enough, please, Fox. What use is anger at this time? Let it go, Fox," replied a very tired Owl. "I will not," Fox snapped back. "That ignorant bird needs to be taught a lesson." "No, he does not," said Owl sternly. "Don't you think Magpie has learnt his lesson already? He almost died, for heaven's sake." Fox shook his head, turned his back on Owl and ran away. "I value life over a pointless key," Owl spat whilst ruffling her feathers. "We will rescue Raccoon, I swear. We need another idea, one which will work this time. Let's all meet tomorrow at dusk, rain or shine, and see what we can do." The creatures agreed and finally went home to bed. Everyone was exhausted. Poor Raccoon was okay. The cage had been his home for a long time before Owl found out where he is, so what difference would another night make? Not much. Raccoon needed to remain hopeful and patient. A murder of magpies waited all night in the nests for their sibling to arrive home, but he didn't. The courage and compassion of Owl was tremendous, and an example to all animals, especially Fox. There were some memories Fox could just not let go of, and this made him bitter and revengeful. "Murder by name, murder by nature," Fox whispered to himself as he sniffed around a big hollow tree trunk, then walked past. Inside it, Bright Eyes lay dreaming about a thunderstorm and a key. The last few hours before dawn were peaceful. Luckily for Bright Eyes, Fox had not seen her sleeping in the tree. All was calm, all was safe, and the next day was fresh and new.